I found in a corporate career that actually I was boxed in. Quite often the organisation would be constraining. I lost my job, and I was, let's be honest, I was pretty disillusioned, pretty angry, and pretty wounded by it. So the Visual Agile Coach Playbook, myself and Alina wrote, we started two or so years ago. And on the one part, the book is based on a role profile called the Visual Agile Coach, but it also has a toolkit.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Dandar.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I am super excited, and I say that a lot, but I am excited this time because you and I have been talking a lot recently about the great progress you've been making in terms of your adventures. And I'd love to know what superpower you're bringing to this episode.
Well, don't think I'm really bringing a superpower. What I was hoping to bring is a way of getting other people to recognize their superpowers and how to squeeze a superpower out of themselves, extract a superpower out of themselves. Because I believe whether you call them superpowers or not, we've all got something in us that can be amazing. And perhaps we can talk a little bit about how I've gone on that process. And I'd also like to add this, the story or the journey started with you way back in the Agile Business Consortium conference. And we'll perhaps talk about how other people have inspired superpowers. And yeah, so it's nice to come full circle to be on here and almost back to where it started to a certain extent.
Oh, wow, Ben. I'm honored, by the way, for the fact that you've said you were inspired even slightly by something that I've done. And it's rare that you ever hear somebody tap you on the shoulder and say, by the way, because of that this happened. And this happened the other day, actually, not for me, but I was at a talk and it was a cyber talk, and Jeff White, I don't know if you've heard of Jeff White, but he's done the famous podcast Lazarus Heist, which I recommend everybody go listen to it. It's amazing. It's all about how computer hackers from North Korea managed to almost steal $1 billion through lots of cybercrime. And somebody in the audience, when they were doing the question time, actually put up their hand. They asked a question, but before they did, they mentioned how their daughter had listened to the podcast and now she had been inspired to go into cybersecurity. So that was such a nice moment. Even for Jeff, I think he was really blown away by that. So it's always nice when you hear
I might
stories.
Embarrass you a little bit more about it later. But one of those key steps to finding your superpower or kind of getting it out of you is inspiration from others. So we'll save that one.
No worries. And I'd like to know a little bit about your background, Ben, because I know you as my LinkedIn friend. So I know there's so much more behind that. Like, who is Ben? Tell us more about you.
Well, now you're embarrassing me, putting me on the spot. So essentially, I'm just someone who's worked in change and transformation, project management, in financial services, 20 or so years. And that's my background. And to in a kind of funny sort of way, when we get to talk about whether it's visual agile coaching or agile ways of working, etc., I feel that I've missed that boat, or I've not really been part of that movement, because my background is more sort of old school change and transformation. So I always feel like I shouldn't quite be at the agile ways of working party. I've written a book called The Visual Agile Coach. It's not all about work, is it? I'm a dad. I hanging around with my daughters and embarrassing them. I riding my bike, walking my dog, and just simple things like that. And then, of course, I suppose there's been this burning ambition from a pretty young age, actually, that I wanted to do two things, which was, as a kid, air sea rescue, be that winch guy on a helicopter, and or write a book, and finally got to write a book. And that's really the having that burning ambition in the background has been there for a long time. And again, I don't think I would have done it if I hadn't have found a superpower. Perhaps we'll talk about that and how you can find it within yourself to actually fulfill a dream or ambition. Other than that, yeah, just someone who hangs out on LinkedIn, meeting people at conferences, meeting people like in LinkedIn chats and networking and hopefully sharing a little bit of content and some creativity and ideas.
Nice. So you've ticked off one of those. So it's just that SC rescue ambition now. I guess that's the one.
Yeah, I might park
on
that
your
one.
bucket.
I might park that one.
So you mentioned there about finding superpowers within yourself. Like, explain that a little bit more, because many of us, we study, we get a job, we work for a big brand, and we get promoted over the years. Like, some would say, well, that's me living my superpowers. But what are we talking about here? Is it that? Is it about being successful in your corporate career, or are we talking something else?
I think you can be. I think let's not rule anything out. And I think being successful in a corporate career is evidence of a superpower in its own right. You need lots of superpowers to be successful in a corporate career. I suppose I found in a corporate career that actually I was boxed in. Quite often the organization would be constraining or not allow me to express myself and express my ideas, whether good or bad. It might have been because they were bad ideas. Let's put that on the table. And I felt that I always wanted to do something a bit different, working within that organization, because I didn't have the superpowers that unlock an organization. I wasn't really living up to my potential, maybe. And that was a strong sense of frustration for me. And it was actually, I was lucky enough to work with a coach, and we had our first few sessions, and I could tell I was frustrating him or winding him up really, because I couldn't express what it was that I wanted in a career, or what motivated me, or what excited me, or what was my interest. And we kept butting heads on this, or not really making progress. And then all of a sudden there was this kind of something clicked, and there was this sort of epiphany type moment that for me, it was teams, and being part of a team was really important to me. And therefore we developed it to creating the best environment for anyone who is involved in change. And that then gave me my, within a corporate or within an organization's mission statement, the thing that I could pin my hat on and say, that's why I'm here. This is what I'm going to do within the organization. But again, come back to that problem of not being able to feel that you can perhaps fulfill your potential within an organization. And that's where finding a superpower or working on a project outside of the organization gave me the freedom to move on and tick off boxes outside of corporate life. Because there's a lot of life outside of corporate life, and we shouldn't constrain ourselves within that. So it started with finding, a little bit of frustration, or finding that I didn't fit or wasn't that good at it. But it wasn't really until I found what really motivated me, that sense of team and that sense of, creating a great environment and having a positive impact on others, that I was ready to start using or discovering superpowers. And there was one thing that I've really found in the writing of the Visual Agile Coach, was this journey of, so I've never really been very academic or very diligent, but I started to learn stuff and research things to help with my writing and the project that I was working on. So we termed that discover. So I started discovering things, and you don't have to discover it in a purely academic way or a purely corporate way. You can go off and read and research and et cetera, et cetera. But then the discovery wasn't enough. I needed to add my mark on it, and we called that develop. And then, of course, once you've developed something, you've put your mark, you've shaped it, maybe like a sort of molding clay, you then got to do it and put it into action. And it was that discover, develop, do mindset that really gave me the roadmap to get to a position writing a book and being able to talk about visual agile coaching, and then being able to talk about that discover, develop, do mindset. So again, not a superpower, but something that unlocks superpowers when you find out what your motivation is and the pathway you can follow.
Yeah, I'd love that, because a lot of the time I'm constantly saying to especially young people as they're starting their careers is, yes, you're now in the world of work, but actually continue those passions. And if you can't bring them into your work, like continue to do them outside of work, because you just never know when the two are going to meet, and you can almost restart remixing them together. And that's just magical when you're able to do that. So I try and keep myself sane by having that balance at times. We want to love our jobs. We want to love our work every day. But I think no matter what job we do, there's always going to be frustration at some point. And it's really nice then to be able to switch your mind over to something that gives you great joy. I'm at the moment, you can't really see, but behind me, I'm having a second midlife crisis. I'm learning how to DJ.
Only a
And
second.
yeah,
Fourth or fifth
second or
one now,
third.
surely.
Yeah, I've done the fast car thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got inspired, and I was like, you know what, I'd love to stand up in front of a crowd. It could be at a workshop, it could be at a conference, and just blast a few tunes. That would be my like bit of joy. I don't think I'll be a very good DJ at my age now, but hey, you know what? It will just bring some joy to maybe one other person in the room. So, talking about discovering this mindset of finding your superpower, tell me that moment for you where you got inspired.
It's funny when you look back and you look how a change or a shift or something quite different happened to you, and you try and pinpoint it. And I would say there was that moment with a coach when we figured out a mission or a purpose. And then the next kind of big critical moment was essentially losing my job a few years ago. And when I look back now, there's this whole confluence of things that happened. So firstly, there's adversity. I lost my job, and I was, let's be honest, I was pretty disillusioned, pretty angry, and pretty wounded by that. And actually, one of the tools or templates that we've created in our Visual Agile Coaching Toolkit is called What Can Possibly Go Wrong? And what it's trying to do is recreate adversity. Because do you know what? When your back is against the wall and you're facing a real problem and you're not sure what the way out is, sometimes you're at your most creative and sometimes you're at your best. So there was certainly this moment of crisis and this moment of adversity. But also at the same time, so again, this is all just coincidence, or maybe it's fate, luck and chance or something. I was reading books like Corporate Rebels and Better Value, Sooner, Safer, Happier, and Be More Pirate. And those books, three of them particularly, when you're in a moment of sort of disillusionment or anger or crisis, and you read these books and there's a load of ideas that you really feel resonate with you and inspire you, and they go, you know what? There is another way. You're not alone. That was a real help for me and a bit of a guiding star and added to that mission. There's also other people out there that you admire, and they can be colleagues or influencers, or it doesn't really matter who they are. They can that help you in those moments, or have achieved things, whether it's friends from university or friends from clubs or friends from school or wherever it is in the community that have achieved things. And you can look to them and go, I'm in a bad spot at the moment, but these guys have achieved something. That's going to talk to them. And I think there was this other point around perfect timing. I mentioned the fact that there was you and Paddy, the Agile Business Consortium, and I saw two people working together in partnership doing a really fun workshop just at the same time that I'd met Alina, who we've co-authored Visual Agile Coach and set that up together. And I saw you guys and went, wow, I've got this business partner or someone I'm creating with. I want to be like Paddy and Grant. And then on the same conference, there was Helen Tupper from Squiggly Careers. And I was looking at it and going, well, maybe I've just had a squiggly career. I haven't had a bad career. I've had a squiggly career. And And then there's Pim de Moray from Corporate Rebels was also on that same conference. So all of a sudden, the books I'm reading, the people I'm meeting, the people I'm being inspired by, have all come together in this sort of confluence or moment. And that was the real catalyst. So one part, I would say that there was a hell of a lot of luck that happened, and it set me on the course to achieving that writing dream. But when you look back on it and you look at how do you release your superpowers? Well, look for inspiration, whether it's books or people or famous people, etc. I wouldn't go and encourage people to lose their job or look purposely for adversity, but perhaps war game things a little bit about how would you do things in a bad situation. And then in a certain sort of way, you've got to trust yourself, which is different to trusting in luck. Law of averages, if you create opportunities, then you get luckier and things will happen for you as well. So I wouldn't put it all down to luck, but you can create your own luck. You can create your own opportunity as well. And those feel to me like good ingredients to extract a superpower, or at least give it the best chance of taking you somewhere and having success.
What I loved when we spoke a while back, you talked about this partnership with Alina and how the two of you have really elevated each other, which we often forget that. I think often we think we're on our own and we're on this mission on our own, and we collaborate with others, but maybe there's a part of us that thinks that person might take my share. And often I think that's such a shame, because actually we're more powerful together. And Alina's going to have her audience, you're going to have your audience. If you collaborate, all of a sudden you've just doubled your audience, right? So tell me more about that concept of partnering with somebody, because again, for somebody listening out there, you might be there sat on your own and you might have a talent or a passion that you think, I'd love to do this, but it's a bit scary on my own. What advice would you have for them?
I would say working in partnership with someone else it's the best thing you can do. It's amazing, and it's worked for us. Might not work for everyone. And I would also say, don't not do something because you haven't got a partner to go and work with, a partner in crime, a sparring partner or someone. But don't be afraid to partner up with someone else. What's our experience? Well, we met back in 2022. Alina is obviously a talented artist. She brought a strong agile background. So each person is bringing something to the partnership. So I spotted in her the visuals, she spotted in me the writing and the words, and we put them together. And we just started working together. We didn't know what we were doing or why we were doing it. We just got started, which is another key. Don't sit there with your superpower in a box or thinking it's there and you're not quite sure what to do with it. Get out and get started, whether it's on your own or others. But we've certainly found that we called it a POP, a power of partnership. And it has been really powerful, because when you're having low moments, if you're lucky, the other person is having a high moment and it balances it out. But there's definitely peaks and troughs, and you definitely experience peaks and troughs at different times, and that levels things out. You've got a sounding board, you've got a sparring partner, you've got someone to inspire you, you've got someone to be creative with, and just someone who's also in it with you together. And I think it really also helps that you've got different personalities as well, because you're going to have arguments, you're going to have conflicts, and from that you figure things out, because you're not just in a sort of a bubble of an echo chamber and with no positive tension or positive challenge. And I think actually, if you look at organizations, you have a CEO and you have a COO, and they're generally two people working in partnership, and they're generally quite different characters. I think if you look at a lot of startup businesses, they're quite often two people, and there's maybe they use stereotypes, the extravagant sort of salesperson, and then the person who's the warrior in the background. But it's having that partnership contrasts, and having a partnership with bringing different things to the table. It's been a fantastic experience for me. And I think you could do that at at work as well. You don't need to be in a startup. You don't need to be pairing up to write a book or will be the COO or the CEO. You can find someone at work, you, anyone in any, whether it's marketing, sales, product distribution, operations, that you can start to build a partnership with and work with. And also you don't have to have one partnership. You can have multiple partnerships, and that starts to help the network and interactions across an organization. So yeah, I'm definitely a +1 or maybe +2 for partnerships. And again, there's no limit to them. And I think they can definitely bring you out of yourself in lots of different ways.
And looking back, are there things you would do differently, and any lessons around that?
Within the context of with my life, or with just visual agile coaching over the last 2 years, because it's going to be a very long podcast if we go way back. I think I'm going to say something a little bit counter to what I've just said, actually. In what I do differently is not wait for that other person to come along, because you can get started on your own. You can unleash your own superpowers, and perhaps we'll talk about a tool and a template for that. But it's, on the one hand, I'm saying find a sparring partner, find someone to work with, but don't sit there waiting for them to come along. Some of the things that I've been terrible at is networking or connecting with other people. You can't sit there passively hoping something's going to happen or something's going to come along. So what would I do differently? Perhaps I would be bolder. So in Be More Pirate, they talk about small, bold moves. So make more small, bold moves more sooner. Perhaps I'd say, I sent you an email a few weeks back and said, Paddy, can I come on your podcast, please? And that I felt I had to get brave to be able to do that, to push myself, reach out and go, hey, can I come on, etc. So there's lots of little things like that where you got to push yourself. Don't sit back and wait for things to come for you. Increase the law of averages, increase your luck. I think there's a boxing phrase, the harder I train, the luckier I get. It's like sporting analogy. And I think it's recognizing you've got to take that personal responsibility, be braver, be persistent, don't give up, take some chances, small, bold moves. That's what I'd do I'd do differently and on my own, rather than waiting for that white knight to come over the horizon and give me my dream corporate job, or come and say, write a book with me and do this project.
Well, I'm glad you emailed me, by the way, and the door was always open.
You were short of guests this week, so you were glad your email walked in.
It was an honor, honestly, to get that email and have you on. So you mentioned a tool. Let's get into the tool.
Yeah, so we keep mentioning it. Feels like I'm heavily plugging this book, but it's been very part of our project and our journey. So the Visual Agile Coach Playbook, myself and Alina wrote, we started two or so years ago. And on the one part, the book is based on a role profile called the Visual Agile Coach, and it has 9 roles and responsibilities, from leadership, transformation, sustainability, stakeholder management, blah, blah, blah. But it also has a toolkit, because for each of those roles and responsibilities, we wanted to create tools and templates to enable people to put what we were talking about into practice. So whether it's transformation or whether it's leadership or teamwork, we wanted to create tools and templates to make the theory and the use of visuals, put it into practice. So we created the toolkit. And one of those within there is something we've called the personal growth rocket, or the Superpowers rocket. And again, it follows that discover, develop, do road or mindset. And what we did as part of the book, we were researching, and I found the learning zone model. And in the learning zone model, you go from comfort to fear to learning to growth. And that kind of stuck in my head. And then as we started to form our toolkit, the idea came to create this personal growth rocket. So what you do is you start with your dream. So for me, write a book. So my dream, my mission, my sort of North Star was writing the book. And what we quite often do when we go on a personal development journey or growth journey is start with what we're not very good at. So you could say, Ben, you've got to get better at Excel. It's going to be a complete waste of time. I'm going to find it really difficult, and I'm not going to get anywhere in that journey. Whereas if you said to me, why don't you start with what you're good at and what your superpowers are? So in this instance, I'm going to say, I don't know, but I think it might be writing. So that's the superpower I'm starting with. Now, a tool that you can also use. So remember, discover, develop, do. I've discovered the learning zone model, but I've also discovered something called Ikigai, which is a Japanese model where you essentially put together what you're good at and what your experiences are and what you can learn from. It's a really interesting model. I can't do it justice, but it's basically four circles. So it's a Venn diagram. And at the very middle, you find the answer to your purpose, or again, it could be your superpower. So what we do then is we try and harness your superpower to help you go on that journey to your mission and pass through that learning zone model. So I would go, right, it's writing. Well, I write a lot of emails, or I used to spend a lot of time on my bike or commuting, coming up with ideas for books. So I was properly in my comfort zone, writing project documentation or writing emails with some sort of funny lines in them, or coming up with scripts or structures for books, etc., and doing absolutely nothing with them. So at that point, my superpower is not taking me anywhere. But when I recognize I'm in my comfort zone and I'm not doing anything, and then I think, well, how do I get into my fear zone? And actually, the fear zone for me was writing LinkedIn posts. So Alina and I, in our partnership, pop small, bold moves, or just getting on and doing something, making a start. We wrote a post a week on LinkedIn. Alina's visuals, my words, and it scared the hell out of me. Putting my words out into public so people could read them. And that really pushed me into my fear zone. And it took quite a lot to do that. I talked about being brave and persistent. So we stuck at it for a year. And as we wrote, we got feedback and we got people saying, hey, that's great, or that's rubbish, or we would try different things, or we'd write different ways, or we would just format the posts differently. So we were learning all the time. And then from that learning, you start to find your art and you get better at it and you're into the growth zone. The happy ending to the story is we went from, I want to write a book, to my superpower, I think, is writing, through that learning zone model, and actually went through it and lived it. And in the end, there's a book comes out of the other end, and we visualize it as a rocket. You're going through those orbits of comfort, fear, learning, growing, and getting to your mission.
I guess my biggest dilemma has always been, what are my superpowers? Because I have lots of passions. I love to doodle. I love to engage with lots of people. I love to talk. I love to facilitate. I love to get a bit nerdy at times. So I find the most difficult thing sometimes is really honing in on what those superpowers are. So any advice and tips for finding those?
Yeah, I think we use some silly examples really from, if you like telling jokes down the pub or with your mates or telling stories, you're probably a really good communicator. Your superpower might be public speaking and etc. That, and it could be something as little or as small as innocuous or inconspicuous as that. I think if you want to find a superpower, it works best if you link it to following a dream or realizing something that you're really passionate about. I think that you have to get yourself on that path of being brave and putting yourself out there. So let's use that analogy of, you're really good at telling jokes. So you might not be. Me neither. I can never remember the punchline. So jokes are not for me. But if you're really good at that, and you go out and when you're in your social group and you're telling jokes and you're telling stories, etc., then start to put yourself into situations such as public speaking, formally at work, to do the public speaking and practice communication. And because it's based on that superpower, are you great at jokes? Are you great at telling stories, engaging people? It gives you the confidence to then go and do the public speaking or the communication, etc. So again, it links back to that being brave, and it's not a one and done, fire and forget thing. You have to be consistently brave. You have to be resilient. You have to put your yourself out there. I think the other thing is just remember it is in you. It's your superpower. It might be in there deep, but it is in there, and you've got to tease it out. And we followed or put together again journey maps or routes. And firstly, think about your why, your purpose. For me, we talked about very early on around it was about the team, and it was about creating a great environment for people delivering change, and that was my mission, and that became my purpose. Or my dream of writing a book, that became my mission and my purpose. And then that starts to help with motivation, because if you can do so, if you're motivated to do something, you're more likely to do it. And if you've got that vision, as we talked about in the growth rocket of delivering a book or being a public speaker at conferences, etc., you know where you're going, and that gives you your mission. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's this Japanese Ikigai, which is translated or means reason for being. And if you go and look that up, go and discover that, and go and develop it, and then go and do it, and see what that unearths about your superpower, and discovering what is deep within there, and then linking it to that why, that motivation, the vision where you want to get to, make it your mission. And it is based on that identification of the superpowers. I think the other thing that makes up a superpower is your experiences. And they might always be good experiences and all that bad, good otherwise, but they're still experiences and they're learning. And you can look back at those and see what you can tap into and build on and craft into a superpower. I think also your values as well, what you believe in. Again, that is a really good foundation on which to craft and on which to build a superpower. For instance, I believe when you deliver change within an organization, it should be the most fun work that you do as part of going to work. And I've got that belief, and it's a value that I try and exhibit every time I'm working on a project or a piece of change or working with people involved in change. And again, I can build my superpower on top of that as well. So there's lots of little building blocks that you start to stitch together or try to help find, that magic force, that powerful force that you can unleash. Call it a superpower if you want, but it's a way of getting things done. So there's a way of achieving things, I believe.
And it's really interesting, Ben, because if somebody asked me back when I was 20 something years old, probably even up until my 30s, my superpower would be communication, for example. I would have run a mile, because I would have said, I'm the most introverted person you'll ever meet. I could never put up my hand in class. I would never stand in front of a group of people and talk. Like, that was just not in my DNA. And if someone said to me in 15 years, 10 years from that time, I'd be really passionate about public speaking, I would have just gone, nah, that ain't happening. But I really like what you said there about sort of your experiences, because as you do start to come out of your comfort zone in certain things, it's like a journey of discovery, isn't it? And you start to identify new things about yourself. You learn a lot about yourself. And it might be that I had never experienced that properly before. So now that I have, I can now make a conscious decision as to, is that something I really enjoy? And I think that's why I love delivering training now. It's a real passion of mine. I love standing there and being able to impart knowledge, but equally really being able to simplify things for people in a way that then makes a difference. Or when I do a silly talk with Grant and we dress up as boxers and we have a boxing match, like that is that entertainer in you coming out and wanting people to have a great experience from that. So I think it's really important that we do experience as many things as we can, so that we then have the opportunity to hone down, rather than honing down too quickly and missing a whole bunch of stuff.
And you may have 5 or 6 latent superpowers, or things that might not actually ever be a superpower or make it. But if you go back to that personal growth rocket from comfort zone, so maybe you were the quiet guy in the group, and maybe you knew something funny to say, or maybe you wanted to get out there and start doing something, but you never did because you were in that comfort zone, or maybe you were butting up against that fear zone. And if you can recognize those skills, those experiences, those passions, the things you like, and you start to take them through breakthrough comfort, through fear into learn and grow, as you said, and you can maybe have two or three of these superpowers that you're testing and fine tuning and developing all along. I think it's quite interesting there when you said you love training because you like simplifying things or messages for other people. So again, that's that vision or that mission or that purpose or the why. Mine is I want people to really enjoy delivering change. Yours is you really want to be able to simplify things for people. Or I know from this Superpowers podcast, you want to bring new crazy ideas to people as well. So there's a passion that's driving you and lifting and elevating your super.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100% with you on that. I now look at my kids and I'm seeing myself in them at times. For example, my daughter, she's not the most extroverted, but I can't wait for when she has those opportunities to be able to discover those hidden gems, because I'm sure all of us have them. Whereas my son is much more extroverted. And so it would be interesting to see which direction he goes in. But no, that's a great sort of part of life, isn't it? We sometimes get inspired by meeting people. And that goes back to our original point we were talking about at the start about going out there, networking, speaking to people, being a bit braver. So all really great bits of advice. So thank you for that. So Ben, you're a busy guy. You've done a lot up until now. What's next for you?
Well, nice still. We've gone through, let's say, Tuckman's forming, a lot of storming, a little bit of norming, and then maybe a bit of performing. And we've gone through that team development stage. And we were at a conference in Ireland and they were driving back. And we were like, well, what's next? What do we do next? We've done our book. We've done some conferences. We've become visible on LinkedIn and talked about visual agile coaching and what next. And so the obvious what next was, hey, let's write another book. And thinking about the superpowers again, one of my, if I can call it that, one of my superpowers is organizing bike rides and organizing ski trips. I always used to do that for my friends, and we'd go out to the Alps and follow the Tour de France, 20, 30 people, ride from London to Paris or Brussels or somewhere, and I would organize those. So if I think about that as a superpower, it is organizing and facilitating. So what we've decided to do for book 2 is, rather than just work as a pair, because that's quite a small echo chamber there immediately, is see if we can facilitate and organize what we've termed open source. And what we're doing is we're trying to invite, it's a bit of an experiment. It's a small, bold move going out onto LinkedIn, the people we've met in conferences, the people we've connected with just as we've gone on this crazy adventure, and ask them to contribute that their passion, their project, their idea, their intellectual property, the things that they create and write about on LinkedIn to book 2. Might need to come up with a better title, and work with them as a bigger community on a project that we're calling the future of work. So the idea of that is, if you're going to write about the future of work, write as if it's the future. And we feel that this experiment of trying to open source a book and invite people to put forward their ideas and their thinking, their creativity, and then try and answer or form a hypothesis of what the future of work could be, is a great and exciting project. So it's got my facilitation and organizational skills within there. It's got the creativity, and it takes a lot of the learning that we found as we went through the journey of book 1 and putting it into play, and hopefully giving other people the opportunity to go on their own personal growth rockets and their own personal development journeys with their passion projects, etc., with as part of that project or idea or experiment, or just trying something else. So that's what's next. We've got some good contributors and creators signed up already that we're working with, and hopefully we will bring together all their superpowers into one super end product that is a useful and interesting book or output that will help other people start to think about what the future of work is and get excited about that. Which is actually something I wanted to ask you about. So let's
Uh-oh.
turn the tables there. You run the Superpowers School podcast, and therefore you must have seen some pretty cool superpowers that you think can contribute to or could be a piece of the puzzle of the future work. What stands out for you? What are you looking at and thinking that superpower is going to be needed in the future of work?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. So I think I'm up to about episode 166 at the moment, something like that. And that means roughly 150 odd guests that I've had, because sometimes we chop up the episode into two. So a lot of conversations, a lot of people. And that's been such a journey in terms of those diverse conversations. Everything from a US fighter jet pilot who was one below Top Gun level, to a psychic medium, to an ex-monk who's now an agile coach, through to the guy who used to work for NASA who built the most complicated toilet in the world. That was a great story that I heard. So lots of interesting superpowers, lots of variety. Something that stood out for me was a guest of mine actually mentioned this, Andrea Pacini, because we were on an episode together, and he reminded me of a quote from Jeff Bezos around this. And it's the famous sort of quote where he talks about, people keep asking him, what does the future look like for Amazon? And he was like, you're asking the wrong question. And he always looks to say, well, what are the things that aren't going to change in the next 10 years? And focus in on that, because that's a pretty good strategy, right? And I think in his case for Amazon, he knows people are always going to want convenience. They're always going to want cheap prices, and they're always going to want variety. So as long as his strategy is focused on those three things, hopefully they'll do okay. And I think for me, in this kind of world of AI, a lot of people will say, you know, AI can never do that. And I hear that a lot. AI can't be as creative as us. AI can't think emotionally in the same way that we can. And now I've started using the word yet, because every day I get blown away. You see just little hints of where AI is going to take us. So I was trying to almost use that same question of, what do I think isn't going to change in the next 10 years? And I think the number one thing that I come back to is human connection, right? As people, no matter how much of an automated world we live in, we crave that human belonging. And it's something that, yes, you could date an AI bot. And I know in Japan, lots of people are. Apparently, there's more people dating AI than real human beings, but we won't go there for now. But generally, we crave that connection, and we crave working with others and collaborating with others. I think that's what makes things meaningful for us. So for me, anything around connection, i.e. communication, I think the greatest communicators will win in the future. People that can really articulate messages, people that can almost process all the noise and communicate that in a simple way. A bit like what you've done with a book. You've taken all these models that can be quite overwhelming. Some of them are quite complex, and you distill them right down so that anybody can pick them up and start following them. Like, that's a real talent to be able to do that. And I think that's what people are craving for, is how can you communicate in a really simple way? So I'm hedging my bets on communication and connection, because that's one thing that I love. But secondly, I see even on the podcast, guests that come on that can really deeply connect with people are just a cut above, right? Where they can really speak the language of the listener, where they can talk to the listener in terms of their everyday challenges and connect with them. They're the episodes that do often really well. One of my most popular episodes was with a good friend of mine who's a leading trauma consultant in the UK. And he went really deep. He really went deep in terms of his background and the day-to-day challenges that he's had to become a doctor. And I think even for non-medical professionals, I've had a bunch of messages from people saying, like, it was so inspiring. That's really made a difference for me. And I put that down to connection because he was able to connect with people. But anyway, what do I know?
It's interesting that because when we quite often tell the story that we missed AI when we were writing the book by like 3 months, 6 months. And what took us 3 months to research the Visual Agile Coach role profile? If I'd asked AI to do it, it would have taken 30 seconds to do it now, and it probably would do a better job. But because Alina and I took 3 months, 6 months to do this and finesse it, we fell in love with the character. We fell in love with the Visual Agile Coach. And we got this really strong connection to that character of which we based the role profiles on. And if we just pressed the prompt, pressed the button, we wouldn't have had that connection. And therefore, when we talk about it, I can feel in myself the passion and the enthusiasm rising. Whereas if I know that I just written a prompt and pressed a button and then got a book, I'd be like, and also I think people would be able to tell that that's what I did. And therefore I didn't have that connection. So I think we're going to value the connection that we have to our work and the passion that we put in and the passion, dedication that we show when we talk about it and communicate it. And maybe AI can be passionate, tell us the story of Japan, but I think we'll always be able to tell. Maybe it's the word authenticity linked to passion, the link to connection, which will maybe differentiate us from the robots for now.
And I just think that energy that we create when you get a whole bunch of human beings together in a conference environment or wherever that might be, it could be at a wedding. There's just something special about that. And for me, that is irreplaceable. I remember over lockdown, a few people were getting married and they were having these Zoom links where you could watch the wedding, but it's never going to be the same as being there and seeing your dad doing that embarrassing dance and all the rest of it, right? That you miss all of that. So on that note, Ben, I'm going to wrap up this episode because I think for me, we've gone deep on a few things, and I think the future of work is a super important topic, and maybe it's an invite to people out there listening as well. I'd love their thoughts. Yes. Yeah, we crowdsource some ideas, and when this goes out, I'd love to hear from people. And here's the other thing. I'm always amazed, Ben, when I look at the stats of the podcast and I see just the diverse places on the planet where people are listening. I see some really interesting places around the world, and it's always an honor to hear that somebody in a faraway land has listened to the podcast, because I'm sat here in Birmingham in my little bedroom office, and when you hear like someone's listened to the podcast in a remote part of the world, I'd love to get some of those diverse opinions as well. So please, if you're listening and you're not based in the UK or mainland Europe or the US, then please do message us, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got any thoughts on the future of work, I'll pass them over to Ben. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on.
Definitely open source the book, which hopefully is a future of work way of writing a book. So something a bit new and different.
Brilliant. And please don't use ChatGPT for your answers, because that will be counterintuitive, I think, for this particular assignment. But yeah, when are you planning to release the book?
Oh, well, I'm not going to put too much pressure on myself or Alina or others, but hey, we've probably got about a quarter of the book written already. There's a few people that were in the pipeline who are contributing, and others that we're going to reach out to because we would like their contributions too. So, and these projects, it probably takes 6 to 9 months, maybe longer to get the content written. And then don't underestimate the editing and the layup, etc. That was a real eye opener. It was quite challenging, but a good learning experience as well. So that's where the persistence and the resilience comes in as a superpower as well.
I'm going to finish off with a question that I ask all my guests at the end. If I could give you any superpower to abolish something in the world of work, what would that be for you?
I'd like to introduce something to the world of work. I feel at the moment, and this relates to the conversation we just had, lots of people dissing or have got problems with meetings. If you go on LinkedIn, there's pretty much every day someone saying, I hate meetings, or let's get rid of meetings, etc. And I think we're missing an opportunity there, because meetings are where we come together as humans and interact and connect. And I know we don't do it as often in real life in the office anymore, or maybe it's lost that buzz or that connection. And a lot of the tools and templates that we designed into the book were to create events and moments for interactions in a hybrid and online environment. But please, let's give meetings a chance. Bring back meetings, but don't just bring back meetings as a governance and a bureaucratic way. Bring them back as events and bring them back as moments that we come together as humans to interact and connect, for that authenticity and for the creativity. And also, I just think fun, because it's pretty lonely just sitting in your little bedroom, office, etc., cut off from the world, sometimes dialing onto the odd VC or otherwise just interacting with your spreadsheet or your PowerPoint. So let's make meetings fun again, would be my request for everyone to unleash their superpowers to put pride, passion, creativity and energy into meetings. And then we'll all have fun.
Well, you got my vote. So let's do it. Let's try it for 24 hours, folks. Let's just make them super fun and engaging, and we will see what happens. Yeah, let me know. Brilliant. Well, Ben, thank you so much. Once again, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better, but also hearing your insights of your journey and your future endeavors. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paddy. Really appreciate it.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.